And folks, if you believe that we're not living in a world where our politicians are operating in breach of trust, I'd have to direct you to the case of Robert Hayes in England, who was recently arrested on tax evasion. He was challenging the taxing system. He was attempting to do it under common law, and he was also involved in a lot of community activism. He was actually arrested in his home at 8:30 in the morning, tried, convicted, and jailed by that afternoon in a secret trial with no jury. And nobody even knew what had happened to him until his family got a call that night or that evening to inform them that he was tried, convicted, sentenced, and jailed all that day before his family even knew what was happening. So there was no chance of any defence for the man. There was no chance of anything. They simply came and took him off the street, and now he is languishing in jail. And this is in a so-called democratic country. And this has been done, folks, by the criminal cabal that has basically infiltrated all of our governments and is now writing whatever pieces of legislation they want, claiming it to be law, and using it to override the natural rights of the people. These are public trustees, folks, who are operating in breach of trust. That's exactly what they're doing, and they're getting away with it simply because of the disempowerment of the people, and this disempowerment is able to happen due to people being distracted in all that they do. People never being given the chance to stop and look at life, stop and look at themselves, look at the value of themselves and the value of other people, and really look at the system that we are allowing to control our lives from a realistic perspective. And this sort of thing is the result of the lack of attention that people are paying to what their servants, the public trustees we elect, are actually doing with the power that we grant to them. And of course, folks, the only people who can actually rectify this situation is the people themselves. It's us. We have to realize where we stand in the food chain and stop allowing ourselves to be distracted and pay attention to what's going on, pay attention to each other, pay attention to what these public trustees are doing with the power that we give them, and take some sort of positive action to address this problem. And I believe the most positive action we can take is to put the common unity back in community and to stand as a community and address the situation of the breach of trust that is being committed by these public trustees. Because the result of the breaches of trust that have been exhibited by these public servants, public trustees, is the state of the world today. I mean, if we had a system that functioned in any way close to what it is supposed to function, and in such a way as the politicians ensure us it does function, we would not have any of the problems that we have in the world today. We would not have any of the pollution, we would not have any of the homelessness, any of the starvation, we wouldn't have things like Fukushima happening, we wouldn't have any of the problems that we have today if these public servants were operating in any way close to the way they tell us they are, or the way they should be. I mean, the mere state of the world today and the state of hardship that most of the human race is in is clear testament to the willful and blatant profiteering and breaches of trust that have been shown by the people within the governments that currently hold power on this planet. And not just within the governments, but any ruling bodies anywhere on the planet, the tops of these major corporations that have done all of this damage and allowed it to happen. But I mean, ultimately, it's got to come back to government, doesn't it? Because it's the government who creates the legislation that enables all of these breaches of trust to occur. And if you really look at where this corruption comes from, folks, well, it's an inherent flaw within the parameters of the system itself, because the system is based on commerce. Because money has intrinsic value. It provides scarcity to people, and therefore it also stimulates greed within other people. And that's where corruption comes from. It's because of the intrinsic value that's placed on money, when really what's valuable is the people. What's valuable is the produce. You know, when you look at the value of an apple as compared to the value of a dollar bill, well, the apple is much more valuable because you can eat the apple. You can't eat the dollar bill. So the apple has intrinsic value simply because it's an apple. It has intrinsic value by the nature of the natural value of its existence. But money is just a piece of paper which is designed to take value away from that which is real and place that value on a piece of paper, which is used to place people in a state of scarcity. That is the sole purpose of money in its current form. And again, folks, it's used to provide not only scarcity but also distraction, because you're always distracted in your need to collect this stuff. And this is how the global system is being built. This is how the New World Order is being put in place. The global governance system, the system of a universal currency, the system of Codex Alimentarius, control of all food, Monsanto quietly creeping its way across the world, the genetic modification of all of the seed stock and all of the environment, the massive changes that the entire earth and everything upon the earth is undergoing, unbeknownst to themselves or unnoticed by themselves, because of the distracted state of humanity. And everyone's either running down rabbit holes or they're off fighting symptoms. No one's paying attention to the actual problem. Everyone's distracted and given a little legal avenue to follow. Anything they can do to keep people working within the parameters constructed for them by the system. And people run down these rabbit holes and they work within these parameters in the vain hope that they may make a difference, but ultimately they don't, because that's the way the system is constructed. And all people really have to do, I believe, is to step back and view the whole thing holistically and see what the actual problem is. The actual problem is the disempowerment of the people. It's the fact that we've forgotten that our actual relationship with government is that of a trust agreement, and we've been removed of the natural power that we all hold by the beliefs that have been instilled into us through the constant repetition of the scholastic and social systems that we've been subject to. It is a tricky situation, folks, but that's really what we're facing. So what we really ultimately need to do is to find a way to shift this paradigm within people. That's what I attempt to do with these radio shows, is to just chip away at that little paradigm that people hold. Their need for governance, their need to be controlled by others, their need to be subservient to a system which doesn't have their best interests at heart. And I can see with civilization the way we have and with a social system the way we have, we do need some sorts of systems, we need some sort of rule, perhaps we do need some sort of governance, but it needs to be based in empathy. It needs to be based in mythology that will be good for the people and good for the planet and good for everything, because it's based in empathy. And we need to have an education system which recognizes this and works towards the betterment of humankind and the betterment of life on this planet, not always working towards a corporate line and an economic model, because it is the economic model and the system of commerce that has created all of the problems. Therefore, it is a flawed system, and that can be seen by anybody who chooses to look. It really is that simple, folks. And so that's what I've been trying to do on these radio shows, is gradually just chip away at this paradigm with people. You see, folks, the state of the world today is the natural result of mankind putting a commercial value on everything and basing our whole society upon a system of commerce and upon an economic model that demands permanent growth. Because this can only result in the destruction of the planet and the discarding of those who work within the parameters of the system. And this is so completely obvious. I mean, I know I've said it probably 500 times on the show, but this is so blatantly obvious that that's what needs to be addressed. So it doesn't matter about all of the symptoms. It doesn't matter about who you choose to point the finger at. Unless you're addressing this system itself by disconnecting from it, then you're not addressing the problem. And the way to disconnect from the system is, again, common unity. You've got to have the community become aware of this information, and so the whole community can basically step away from it. And people write and they say, okay, Max, how do I step away from it? Well, the way to step away from it is to realise that it's a trust agreement that exists between you and government. Hold these governments in breach of trust. But again, you need the community to do it. You need the entire community to stand and say, hey, we know what's going on. This is a trust agreement. And the state of the world today indicates a massive breach of trust on behalf of the government. The fact that there's people in the country that are in a state of hardship indicates a massive breach of trust on behalf of the government. The fact that people even have to pay to be alive indicates a massive breach of trust. I mean, think about it, folks. Think about what life could be if you lived in a system based on empathy, where free energy was allowed, and where mankind was allowed to achieve their highest potential and to be all that they could be. Imagine the possibilities that we could have, and imagine the world that we could build. And you just have to look at that and think about it. Just meditate on that a little bit, and think what we could do if we were not enslaved to a system of commerce by our public trustees. Things could be very, very different. And the key to it, folks, is understanding that that's what these people are. They are public trustees. And it's by realizing that they're public trustees that we can find remedy to this situation, but we have to be prepared to stand in our power. And because we are frail, we've been kept in this sheltered state for so very long, we do need the power of the community around us, because it gives us that reassurance that we need and that confidence that we can stand up and make a difference. And so it all comes down to respect for yourself and respect for the people around you. And this is why I've also mentioned this so very often on the radio show. But I think it's break time here, folks, so we'll leave it there for now and go and have a break. It's been a pleasure speaking to you today, and I'll continue in a few minutes. Thanks for listening.